The most effective weapon is the victim's own body. For example, pay diligent attention, exploring softly, gentle practice. Your thumb will learn precisely where to burrow between the eyeball and its socket, knuckle deep. Then it's just a flick, a grunt, a flip. There are other sweet and tender places too, full of ache. The base of the throat, under the chin, things you never think about or think I never think about. So much of what I write is really sad or dark or hard and I think I'm not quite as depressive and dour as, maybe dour is wrong, not quite as depressive in person as the books are, I think. It's not even so much that I like the end product, right? Like the poem or the story or the whatever, but I like that feeling of having tried really hard to give voice to something that I didn't have a voice for before, you know? Or trying really hard to express something in a way that other people hopefully can also feel. I would write poems about trees on my way home from school and all sorts of dreadfulness, and I'd come home and recite them to my mother, and she gave me a scribbler for me to write them all down in. And then when I was a teenager, I wrote exactly the kinds of poems one would expect. Deep, angsty, terrible teenage poetry. But you know, it was really, really important for me to have that. And I look back and I know it sounds sort of cliche, but I look back and I think, thank God I had something somewhere. The dreadful teenage angsty poems were, in a lot of ways, the things that kind of kept me sane.
She actually showed up in my first year English classroom, and she really astonished me with her writing and with her perceptive reading of literature. She just was a person who was definitely a literary person, I think, just at heart, probably born that way.
Chandra's kind of an enigma, you know? She's a big, tall Amazonian, I think of her that way anyway, but she's also very delicate and very, she's one of the most sweet-natured people I've met. She's this kind of tough one who'd take you down in a second, but she's got a Hello Kitty collection.
She's got the sharpest wit of anybody that I know, so I think I like to tell her that I think she's the most judgmental and the least judgmental person that I know at the same time.
I was never hugely interested in plot in the stories that I wanted to tell. I was interested in how it really felt, right? Like, what does it really feel like to be inside that kind of a moment or that kind of a decision or that kind of a whatever, right? That kind of emotional intensity.
She still has a capacity to sort of electrify things when she's around, which has a lot to do with her her mind and her sense of humor and her perceptiveness.
The poet has black sheep over the holidays. Christmas needs its villains. What else do the lights and stars save us from? You stealers of pudding and tight-fisted harridans, gifters of glittering coal and shrunken-hearted goblins, welcome, welcome to the festivities. Save a seat for me at your table, tucked between the drunken uncle with wandering hands and the sullen child who steals from Santa in the mall. Let's shut our ears tight to the carols, keep all the choice mummers' rolls to ourselves. Our dark little corners and hearts are the black velvet curtains that set off the gleam of the tinsel, the echoing snap of cheap foil crackers at the family table, the need for trees and snowflakes in the window. We are the endless dark skies against which the stars shine and shine, the keepers of your secret fears, the fists of stone that spark the flint for all your flickering winter candles.
A very lyrical voice she has that carries over into her prose as well as her poetry. Very vivid, sharp imagery, and a real courage is one of the most astounding things I think about Chandra. Is she will write about anything. She will really write from the heart. She will write very gritty, personal things.
The poems in August Witch, pretty dark poems for the most part about, about things that hurt and about things that make you feel alone and what it feels like in that moment to feel really alone.
She writes about the body, about the human body, about a woman's relationship with her own body, in very intimate terms sometimes, and very surprising terms.
I can't claim ownership of my body. At best, we have an uneasy truce, renegotiated with every uneven patch of pavement, every crowded street, every heated, throbbing baseline, seducing my hips and urging me to dance floors teeming with feet. This body and I frequently betray each other. Each of us have honed our skills and strategies of petty revenge into instinctive art forms. We've learned that skin is a canvas receptive to knives and needles, fingernails and flame. We send each other cryptic postcards, etched in scars and stretching wrinkles. My favorites are the unexpected gifts, slyly, clandestinely planned and delivered instantly. Riots of tender flowers, blossoming purple, yellow, green across my flesh. These velvety, bruised bouquets are never accompanied with a card, but oh, my secret, deviant admirer, I'd know your fingerprints anywhere. People read my books and then feel like they really know things about me, specifically about me, Chandra, because mostly they're written in that I voice and in that really personal, intimate kind of voice, but it's not necessarily me. It's kind of that I voice that hopefully other people can find themselves inside of.
And she also takes, whether it's a relationship or a situation, and she turns it around and she looks at all sides of it. She's aware of all the different aspects of it at all times. And so even if, say, you and her are having kind of an off day, she'll have a way of turning that around and looking at it so that it's like a prism that shows a different kind of light than maybe the one you're projecting.
One time when she did a set of readings for me, she read these new lipstick poems. Like, she just had made these gorgeous things based on the colors of lipstick. You probably have not actually looked at lipstick displays, but there are hundreds of colors, but they're all basically red, pink, orange, right? Sometimes maybe dark burgundy, but they all have these wild names. So she made these beautiful poems that were playful and tender and erotic. Wet Shine Diamond, Pink Fantasy. I can be devastating in pink, sheer and smeared with glitter, bitter to the kiss. My body wrapped like candy in black, eyebrow arched, darting in and out of the baseline on this slick floor, lights strobing. The DJ sits like a young frog high up in his booth, surrounded by spinning black discs like water lilies. Pond scum is what I like to call my dating options, my pink heart clutching for my girlfriend sleeping at home alone in our bed. This club of writhing women holds little interest for lips like mine tonight, though they can do damage all the same. In the washroom, a monolithic butterfly drag queen kisses my bare shoulder with a fuchsia promise. And a woman with black eyes lets her hand linger on my ass as her gaze drips down my reflection in the mirror. I smile, pink treachery, the silver ring glinting in the corner of my lip. Neither of us mean it, and I order another vodka at the bar, leave small smudges like the inner petals of flowers on all the rims of all the glasses.
She was a poet first, and I think that poetic voice speaks in the stories as well.
you know, if you want to be a writer of any sort, then take a poetry class. I mean, you don't have to commit to writing poetry for the rest of your life. I don't care. But take the class, because what poetry can teach you is such a way to pay a particular kind of attention to economy of language and to precision of language. You know, in a novel, you have, you know, 200-300 pages to kind of get your point across and work things out. And poems are so much shorter. So in a poem, every word has to be there for a reason. And the reason has to be a good reason.
It's often a very similar persona or very similar narrator who is a young woman, usually in some severe danger, living in poverty, hanging out with other young mothers.
They're, you know, people who feel broken, feeling alone and feeling alienated and feeling different in some way and feeling judged and feeling misunderstood and feeling like you can't catch a break, but still finding ways to make your own community and make your own family and make your own system.
Things are sharp, things are dangerous. There are cigarette butts, probably needles left out in the playground where the kids are playing. There's beatings going on, domestic violence. Litter in the streets, drunkenness, throwing up, drugs, loud music, punk music, and all this. And yet, there's this incredible, beautiful, lyrical voice that's telling you about all of these things. Cherry, I guess, is the most astounding book.
Tom shoves me into the hall, and my arm is striped with purple lines like a barcode from his fingers. I hit the wall and fall in time to the screwdriver refrain. I have no shoes and no jacket and nowhere else to go as Tom slams the door and locks it with a snap that reverberates in my ribcage. Michelle and Shauna live downstairs, the Chelsea and the glam girl, and I knock on their door, crying again, always crying without moving my lips. Shauna doesn't bother to ask what's wrong. The ceilings are thin and every girl's story blends into the next one. She says, "We're going out," and I say, stupidly, "I have no shoes." She laughs and opens her closet and says, "What size are you?" There are mounds of boots, Docs, Combats, black, blueberry, every color. She gives me a pair of cherry 24 holes, and my legs have never felt so lean, so ready to run. Michelle gives me fishnets and red lipstick, and Delight sings on the stereo my succotash wish, and I am a shit-kicking princess in a miniskirt and flight jacket, and I'm terrified that Tom will find out. We walk to the Spectrum, and I can't remember who plays, but I dance and drink screwdrivers all night, my own joke. It is dark and sweaty, and the sound slams off the stone walls, and I'm deep in the pit, and I'm a blur of elbow and knee, and I can't feel a thing, and my body blossoms purple like an insomniac morning glory. Shauna and Michelle have my back, and this night will never happen again. This freedom tastes like cocaine, and it burns all the way down my throat. I get so strung out that I can't remember how it ends, but I know that Tom eventually opens the door, and I'm not there.
It's a very moving story, because here you have this incredibly helpless person who seems to feel worthless in some ways and puts up with this terrible abuse, and yet somehow, there's something inside her that manages at the end to rise up and get out of there.
When it's Chandra's voice, I can hear Chandra's voice very quickly, and it has to do with a kind of dry wit that sort of slices through things. Even the most potentially sentimental of subjects have a little bit of acid in it, a little bit of bite that makes you kind of wince and giggle at the same time.
You know, when you look at people and you see that their lives are a mess and they're falling apart all over the place, it's easy to sort of write them off, but there are these other things that are so incredibly lovely about us, and especially when we're broken.
The fragility and vulnerability of the young narrators in her stories, particularly in Cherry, but also in All the Pretty Girls, where you find a lot of characters in similar situations. They really are dependent on the welfare system and the government, and to see it from their point of view, I think is really beautiful writing.
It gives all of us a chance to feel what those lives are like, and also to see how they are the same. They are ours.
I took a deep breath, lemon and rose, and pulled a chair over to the front window, tucked into the gold curtains at the side. I wrapped my feet around the legs of the chair and shifted Gwenny's chubby heft in my arm, tighter against my body, and she nestled into me. Up the street, the black smoke billowed out from the tall chimney of the plant, nearly indistinguishable from the night sky. I heard Gran start to snore, a faint rattle, the quiet shiftings of an old woman in bed for the night. I watched for headlights sliding through the shadows of the street. What I was trying to communicate in each of those stories in a different kind of way is that even when things are super dark and super dreadful and difficult and awful and messy and chaotic, there's always something beautiful. And that finding that something beautiful is amazing, but even being able to look for it, right? Even being able to be able to search for something beautiful, not a huge beautiful thing, but a connection or a person or a moment.
Her life isn't, like one of those little things that I had when I was a kid that had all the little drawers in it, and I had all my little stuff in the drawer, like one of those sewing things. She's not one of those people at all. Everything is all over the place all the time.
A few years back, she took up cross-stitch. Nobody does cross-stitch anymore, right? And so she's this really gutsy, rewriting all the social codes kind of woman. But then she decorates old aprons, and it's lovely. But she's made for me fantastic little cross-stitch cards. She knows I kind of have a little bit of a soft spot for pigs, so they have these beautiful pigs. One of them is wearing red boots, and then she's cross-stitched a little poem around the outside edge. Like, it's just this beautiful little art piece.
There are people who talk about how much they love writing and how it's their favorite thing to do, and they feel so great when they're doing it. And I sometimes think, I don't know who those people are. Am I doing it wrong? Because it's exhausting, right? And it hurts, and it's really hard. I want to find ways to say things that feel true, and I want to find ways to say things that are vulnerable, and so that hurts. I come out of those really intense creative spaces feeling shaky and exhausted and weird. I finished something. Or at least I think I finished the first thing of something. And there's maybe a 5-minute window where I'm really happy with it, like so happy with it, and I'll call people on the phone and read it to them. And then the 5-minute window is gone. It's like, oh my God, what have I done? I can't believe I called someone and read that to them. It's always hard to balance having enough time to write, both actual physical, literal time and space, but also kind of emotional time and space to, get into it, with having enough money to eat food and sleep under a roof. If you only ever talk to people who are just like you all the time, eventually you become a fairly boring person, I think. We need to be challenged, we need to be shaken up, and we need to disagree, and we need to, because when you disagree with something, you start to understand what you do agree with or what you do think, and if you never disagree with anyone, you never really think about what matters to you or what's important. The way that we understand ourselves as individuals is by telling stories, right? When you go on a first date with someone, you don't hand them your resume, you tell stories about who you are and what you've done or what you like or what was fun or something sad and hard that happened, and that's how we get to know other people, and it's also how we come to understand ourselves and who we are by the kinds of stories that we tell and the ways that we tell them. And that's true not just as individuals, but as cultures and as societies. That's how we understand ourselves and who we are and who we want to be and who we could be and who we have been and who we wish we hadn't been. And I think the stories that we tell are so important, and we need to make a space for people who help us tell those stories and provide those stories so that we can listen to them and agree with them or disagree violently with them and find different stories to tell. And that's part of what makes an individual or a family or a culture or a country or a society understand itself and know who it is and who it wants to be.